Which conspiracy theory is so believable that it might be true?
Silent scan.
That your phone's microphone is constantly hot, and it's listening for keywords to target advertising. Most glaring instance where this happened to me was when I walked into a colleague's office. He had just gotten a standing desk, but one that goes on top of his existing desk, rather than a standalone, pun, model. That's important to note. I said, nice standing desk, when did you get that? Thanks, just today. He replied. That was literally all that was said about the desk. We talked about work-related stuff, and as I walked out and checked my phone, there was an ad on Facebook for that exact model of standing desk. I have never owned one, wanted one, or Googled one before. Yet there it was on my feed. Tinfoil hat be damned, they listen in.
Silent scan.
Michael Jackson was chemically castrated by his father to preserve his soprano singing voice, which was the source for his infatuation with children.
Silent scan.
All rocks are soft until you go to touch them. Sounds like my dot, never mind.
Silent scan.
Miley Cyrus's crazy streak was all a carefully planned marketing scheme to get her solidified as an A-list celebrity. I believe it was done to make Disney completely cut ties with her and kill the image of Hannah Montana. It's worked too. Hannah Montana was quite possibly Disney's largest TV show ever, but I haven't seen anyone even mention it for over 4 years now, and despite Disney cashing in on old IPs, Aladdin, Kim Possible, Lion King etc., we have yet to even hear an unsubstantiated rumor regarding Hannah Montana.
Silent scan.
The Vatican holds horrible dark secrets and many answers to existential questions. And that Area 51 is a publicity stunt by the government to hide the real testing facility. The Vatican has many vaults literally stuffed with thousands of documents that no one but people in the Pope's circle have access to. Who knows what's in those? I'm willing to bet there are parts of the Bible Christian history that will never see the light of day, thanks to Emperor Constantine creating the first official canon of the Bible.
Silent scan.
I have long argued to friends and family that Barack Obama may have been a CIA operative sometime in between college and being a community organizer in Chicago. Bear with me. After graduating from Columbia in 1983, Obama went to work for a company called Business International Corporation. The company that is known to have been used as a CIA front in the past. There is little information available about this time in Obama's life. The CIA was actively recruiting at that point in history, and would have been very interested in a young black man with an Ivy League education and ties to Indonesia and Africa. The information would most likely still be classified, but it could also have helped his rapid accession in politics at such a young age. After nursing this theory for a while, I finally googled it and, sure enough, loads of websites tout similar theories. Some of it convincing. Not the stuff about him being a CIA chrononaut who fought Russians on the moon. That angle is less convincing.
Silent scan.
The Laurel Canyon Conspiracy. Basically, if you look at the counterculture revolutionaries in the music industry in the 60s, most of them were the children of military intelligence people. So the theory is that the free love, lots of drugs movement they inspired was done intentionally to distract the youth from a full-scale revolution. The thought was if the angry youth of the mid to late 60s were too high and getting laid all the time, they would stop caring as much about societal ills, and then basically sleepwalk through the 70s, which they did. I stumbled upon this when I was reading up on Jim Morrison, and how his father was the one who called in the fake strike at the Gulf of Tonkin, that kicked off the Vietnam War, and which was shown later to have been a false flag. Turns out, a lot of his contemporaries were also children of highly placed military people with ties to intelligence. Strange that they all wound up in Laurel Canyon as part of the same movement.
Silent scan.
The development of the F-35 fighter jet is so over budget, so the military can fund other top secret projects without making a new line item on the budget. It's the only conspiracy theory I believe. $10,000 for a hammer. $20,000 for a toilet seat.
Silent scan.
The recommended food pyramid is created by the FDA, but the FDA is funded by a lot of certain food industries, poultry, dairy, etc. They in turn made the recommended nutrition based off of their funding by these companies, and not based on a well-balanced diet.
Silent scan.
This is going to get buried, but smartphone batteries. Remember when phones used to have removable batteries, and now almost none of them do? A law enforcement agency could make you think that your phone is powered off when in reality it's just displaying a black screen. That way they could still track you, listen to your conversations and take pictures. You would never know for sure.
Silent scan.
The oil and coal industries invested heavily in killing off nuclear power as an attractive alternative. These days we have reactor designs many times safer than other methods of generating power, and the waste issue is something that could be fixed with sufficient investment. Not even a matter of these days. Even taking into account disasters like Chernobyl, estimated around 4,000 premature deaths, and Fukushima H600, nuclear is incredibly safe compared to coal's 5,000 accidents per year. Nuclear kills 90 people per petawatt hour generated, whereas coal kills 100.000 people per petawatt hour, mainly because of lung problems worldwide. Even if we don't take into account the climate change contribution, most of those deaths are easily avoidable if we switch to nuclear. Edit. Here is the source of the deaths per energy unit claim. It's Forbes. Not the best, but it's what I found with a quick Google search. Also edit. A lot of people are telling me that Fukushima had 0 radiation-related deaths, and that the numbers for Chernobyl are also debatable, but most people here claim the ones I posted as too high. I intentionally chose some of the highest estimates I found when Googling just to be on the safe side of supporting nuclear energy, so that this comment couldn't be disregarded just by saying, you estimated too few kills, nuclear kills so many more. Even when choosing some of the highest numbers, those numbers pale against the deaths caused by fossil fuels.
Silent scan.
Snapchat worked with the FBI to popularize and secretly test and improve face recognition technology. We went from wow, this is like magic to this is totally normal in a few years, and there's no way that the technology isn't being by law enforcement. Have you read the terms and agreements of Snapchat? It's not that secret that most social media is selling your information, including the one we're using right now.
Silent scan.
I've always found it very plausible that Hitler didn't kill himself in the bunker and instead fled to South America. Let's look at what we know about his death. With Germany on the brink of defeat and Russian forces closing in, Hitler shoots himself in a bunker hours before they arrive. German soldier then dragged the bodies of him, his wife, and his dog into the front yard and burned them beyond recognition. The bodies are positively dated by dental records provided by the NZI party. Given the fanatical devotion the NZIS has to Hitler, it is extremely possible that they would have been willing to shoot and burn body doubles and alter the dental records of the corpses to match Hitler and his wife. Meanwhile, Hitler would have been evacuated to a country where he could lay low and take on a new identity. My guess would be Argentina, who fostered multiple high-ranking NZI officials. I'm not saying he couldn't have also just shot himself in the bunker, but the whole thing always felt fishy. French scientists have recently studied the skull that Russians claim is Hitler's, and they believe the skull is Hitler's, though a study done a few years earlier in the US says it is not Hitler's.
Silent scan.
Operation Northwood, 1962, is a legitimately classified CIA operation to blow up military and civilian targets, commit acts of terrorism in the US, and blame it on the Cubans to start a war with Cuba. Thankfully President Kennedy rejected it, but it makes you think.
Silent scan.
Michael Jordan's first retirement was actually a suspension by the NBA because of his gambling. It was to avoid a suspension. Subtle difference. Avoid a public suspension. I mean, if the league gives you the option to take a suspension or take a few years off, it's still technically the league suspending you.
Silent scan.
Lotteries are actually traps for time travelers. Stephen Hawking already held a party for time travelers, and no one showed up. Yeah, but all the time travelers knew that nobody showed up, and who wants to show up to a party as the only guest? Sounds like a lame party to me. You joke, but that's actually possible if you subscribe to the theory that the timeline is mutable as opposed to fixed. In a mutable timeline, the fact that the announcement happened after the party requires the first loop of the party to have no attendees. In a fixed, everyone who would attend the party always did, and there's no loop. So for people to attend the party, it would require choice by the travelers who would have heard about nobody attending in the initial loop, and would make the decision to not change the lack of attendance, either to preserve the timeline as it originally happened, or because as you say they wouldn't want to attend a lame party.
Silent scan.
Bob Vance was just trying to plug his business to the cameras every time he introduced himself. Kevin played dumb and was actually embezzling and/or laundering money. When they find out the one guy from Stanford was arrested for insider trading, Kevin even says that sounds exactly like what I do every day.
Silent scan.
UFOs are just time travelers from the future just checking us out. They keep their distance so not to disrupt anything, and to cause a butterfly effect that may affect them. To add to this, the reason why we have fewer UFO sightings these days is because everyone has smartphones and cameras in general are getting better, but it's not because we're no longer mistaking random things for UFOs like we used to. It's because all UFOs are people traveling back in time, but since the invention of the internet, and how well documented things are now, there's a lot less history that future humans don't already understand.
Silent scan.
This might be in here already, but the push for $15 minimum wage was created and supported by the companies that would most negatively be affected. Fast food, McDonald's, shipping, Amazon warehouse workers, etc. to drum up negative public perception of these workers as entitled. Why should they get $15 per hour flipping burgers when I'm making $25 per hour doing insert considerably harder job, and these jobs aren't for supporting a family? Then, when they inevitably ask for too much, as they were secretly supported to do, make the switch to automation in virtually all these jobs. Public perception will be behind the corporations standing up to the entitled losers, and make the transition easier on the company's annoying-ass AI, that take at least 2 to 3 years of true public use to perfect. No one will feel bad, and now those low-skilled workers will be out of a job with virtually no mobility.
Silent scan.